functions. So the way this basically runs, I start with my main, and I will point out this is not fully documented. Yours should be much more documented. Um, but I've got key comments here and there. So a menu, I read the menu in. Now I got some checking here so that if they enter in a letter, if they enter in some bogus letters, it'll tell them it's an invalid option and then prompt them again. So that's stuff we've talked about. And then depending on what they enter, we're either going to get the file info. Again, that's the same function we've been using all the time. The one that's more interesting here is let's look at the read event list. So if I go down and look at read event list, so all I'm sending to that is the file stream. And in that case, we're getting a line. So, this is actually key here too. This something hopefully you discovered, make life easier. It's not as important here for reading the event list. It's more important when you're searching. But when you search, you got to make sure you get back to the beginning of the file each time. So you could just close the file and open the file again. What I chose to actually do was use this infile.seekg, so that always moves you back to the beginning of the file. And, well, actually, I said it was only important for search. It's important here too, because if you run this read event list twice, the first time you run it, it ends up at the end of the file, the file marker. If you came back in here again, your file marker would be at the end each time. So you need something in here to reset it back to the beginning. Again, you could close the file and reopen it, but that's kind of inefficient. So we just use this seekg. And you need the clear in here because, well, you may not totally need it, but depending on how you get to the end of the file, like in my case, I loop through the file by doing while in file. So that means after it reads past the end of the file, my in file goes into a fail state. And we know that when a file stream or any input stream enters a fail state, it stops reading anything. So it would never do anything else. I wouldn't actually be able to do this seekg until I clear out the fail state. Anyway, so once I get fail state everything back to the beginning, I read a line in, and I chose to actually just read a straight line of data in from the file, and actually, let's take a look over here at the file. So the file, I told you it had to be the event and then the date and then each thing separated by commas. So you could have actually just read each thing in piece by piece by piece. You could have done this get line in file in string, and then it actually has another parameter option where you could actually put a comma in there. So you could have comma, and then as your type in as your actual delimiter, you could actually put a comma in there, and it would actually read everything up to the first comma and put it in string. I chose not to do it that way. I chose to read the whole string in and then pass it to parse event. So if I go down and look at my parse event, all I'm doing is passing that string I just read, and inside of parse event, I then essentially do the same thing. I basically just go through and take the string, use the built-in class functions part of that string, so I find the delimiter, and I set the delimiter to a comma, so that finds the marker for the current position of that comma, and then I use the substring function so that it'll actually give me a substring from the beginning to that next position, and that's my name, because that's the first thing in here. So basically I'm finding the comma and then doing a substring for the first part of it. And then I just repeat that process for each thing. So the benefit here is I don't have to keep on reading the file over and over and over again. I just read it once, pass the string in there, and everything comes through. It's arguably not that efficient, or not that inefficient to read the file repeatedly. This is just a little quicker. And you save a few microseconds overall. It makes for a better program. Should always be thinking about those little performance things. Let's see, the other thing here is because not everything was a string, some of these I read it in as a string, but then I had to convert it into a year, so that's where one of my auxiliary functions came in. There actually is a built-in function to do this. S2I will actually convert it to an integer, but there's some issues with various compilers and things, so I just wrote my own, so that was one of those auxiliary functions down there. But essentially that's all it does. It just runs through and grabs each piece, parses it, and then stores it inside the event. And then once everything is all populated, I just use this function just to return the event. So that's how I get everything read from the file. Now, the other thing I didn't do in here, and you can see that now based on the next program, I actually didn't put this in an array. You could have actually stored these things all in an array. Then you wouldn't have had to worry about this. Oops, I lost it. Here's the read event. You wouldn't have had to worry about this restarting the file each time, because you would just read the file once, put it in the elements of the array, and then just loop through the array and find it. But I left that for the next version of it.